Hey, I'm Randy Younger, New York City's go to film enthusiast. Every week, I dive deep into the world of cinema with special guests from the New York City film scene. Whether I'm interviewing industry insiders or comparing the latest releases, there's always something for every movie lover. Join me as I explore the magic of film and discover what makes these movies unforgettable. Happy holidays, everyone. I'm Randy Younger with Under the Radar, and with me tonight, one of my very favorite guest critics and good friend to the show, and to me personally, Mr. Chris Clemente. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you for having me as always.
Of course, of course. Happy holidays to you and
Happy
yours.
holidays. Happy holidays.
Yes,
Yes.
we are in the middle of it right now. We have another, yeah, in exactly 10 days.
Yes.
Christmas will be here, my favorite holiday. Obviously, you see that. Got a little, there you go.
No, mine,
Close.
I just have a simple snowflake.
I love it. Simple. But
Simple,
yeah, we're looking good. We're feeling good. And
good.
this
Holidays.
yeah, this is gonna be a very special episode, and there's no one I'd rather spend it more with than Chris.
Oh,
Uh,
thanks.
he's been with
Thank
me since not basically, but since the beginning of Under the Radar.
you.
And yeah, so we actually started in Deer Park, Long Island at Madhouse Studios. And we had a great time there with Miss Erica A., fantastic videographer, guest critic, and we had a lot of fun. And we're still doing this since we've been doing this since 2016, which is
Wow.
scary because in just a few weeks it's going to be 9 years since been doing the show. How do you feel about that, Chris?
Oh, I'm so proud of the show. I'm so proud of you in just keeping up.
Yeah.
It went from a segment at Madhouse,
Right.
with Evan to your own show and looking at multiple outlets and really years and years of just great interviews and just great talks about film. Uh, Big and small, which I'm a big fan of giving smaller films their voice, and you certainly have done that over the years, and I'm very appreciative of that. So
Yeah, it's all
whether
the
I agree with your opinions or not, that's
oh,
another that's
I know.
another.
We've had sort of a Siskel and Ebert thing going, but a little more cordial, I'd say.
Yeah,
A
a little
little
bit, a little
civil.
bit less, headstrong, I would think.
Yes. But I think we see
Definitely.
eye to eye fairly regularly, but
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think we see pretty much eye to eye. I think both of us respect film. Uh, I've certainly respect even the worst of films because it's so hard nowadays to get anything made. It's
yeah.
almost like I give a pass just to, for a B-rated movie just to, get it, out the door. So,
Yeah,
you know,
I'll be honest. When I started the show, I was doing mostly like bigger films,
yeah.
to be honest. But then eventually, I kind of evolved into more of I respect smaller voices, smaller
Hmm.
making, and filmmakers. And it went from the blockbuster to now my favorite genre is the independent or smaller dramedy. And
Yes,
you
I was
know,
gonna say it's probably dramedy.
yeah, yeah, it's usually the case.
Yes. Have
But
have you
yeah,
coined that? Did you originally come up with dramedy? I feel like
no, I don't think I did. But if I did, then kudos
that's
to
much
myself.
more. Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
was someone else.
I
I'm pretty sure someone else came up with the term romedy,
Yeah.
which is in that same vein. But we could talk about the origins of the phrase for hours and hours.
Yeah. From the
But
origins of Under the Radar.
yes, that too. I love the puns.
Mhm.
But tonight we're going to be discussing two Christmas movies, and for those who don't see me doing the air quotes, Christmas,
In quotes,
these
yeah.
are these are two action movies released in the 80s that are they both take place during Christmas time, and they both kind of redefine the genre. They're a year apart. We have in 1987 Richard Donner's Lethal Weapon, the first of four installments, and there's also a TV show based on it as well. The following year, 1988, we have John McTiernan's Die Hard, which also takes place at Christmas. and that inspired what is it, four sequels? Two, three, four, five. Yeah, I think it was four sequels, and lots of merchandise, a lot of video games, and I think some comic books too. But both franchises are basically very instrumental in redefining the modern action film. And
Mhm.
I'm a fan of both. I'm leaning more towards Die Hard. I'm more of a fan of that. And the sequels, especially Die Hard with a Vengeance, which, Chris, I know you're a fan of as well.
Mhm.
But first off, let's talk about Lethal Weapon. And what are your thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, I think I swing the other way when it comes to that way. It's a film that I thinking more and more about it, and I haven't really thought of it as a Christmas movie or a Christmas themed movie.
Right.
But just thinking about it in terms of what it's done for filmmaking and what it's done for the action film, I kind of lean towards liking Lethal Weapon more than Die Hard, you know. Yeah, yeah.
All right. I think it has a lot more humor because it focuses on two police officers rather than just one. So you've got Riggs and Murtaugh, played by Mel Gibson and Danny Glover, respectively. And
Hmm.
their chemistry is hilarious, especially in the beginning of their relationship. They are at each other's throats,
Yeah.
and it is hilarious to watch the both of them on screen.
And that's a great point. And I think that's why I love this film so much. And I really
Hmm.
see it as a cornerstone for action is because you get the dynamic of Danny Glover and Mel Gibson and they're worlds apart. And just over topness with Mel Gibson's performance, but also very, very somber and tender and it kind of showcases PTSD from I don't want to say a campier because I don't want to belittle the syndrome,
No.
but it definitely elevates it, you know, to a new height in this movie. The movie itself, like Die Hard, but I would say Lethal have Weapon more so feels like a product of its time. You know, it feels almost outdated nowadays, but there's a lot of just, you know, very mainstream action, mainstream violence that, you know, I think carries over to today
Yeah.
in action movies.
Hmm.
But, you know, from a screenwriting perspective, from a filmmaking perspective, I kind of lean towards the impact of Lethal Weapon because of Shane Black. You know, if you look at what this film making, this screenwriting has done, it's really elevated and created that boom. You know, like this screenplay sold for, you know, multiple millions of dollars, which was, you know, a first for its time. You know, the fact that a spec script, a script that someone just wrote originally, and
Mhm.
it made so much money and it sold for so much money and made such a big impact, it kind of spawned, you know, this concept where writers had the upper edge a little bit, where instead of a studio contracting writers within their own system, they were actually looking outside the system for new writership, I think. So I think to that standpoint, I think Lethal Weapon, you know, has a lot longer legs, you know, and
Okay.
but you know, not to say I dislike Die Hard. I love Die Hard, but as you'll get into, Randy, like there's so many sequels and so many copycats from Die Hard that it kind of dilutes the Die Hard brand a little bit.
Mhm.
So whereas Lethal Weapon, yes, it has their sequels, and to be quite honest, I forgot a lot of the details within the
Yeah.
sequel.
Same, same.
But the first, I feel like really elevates Mel Gibson, elevates the buddy cop genre, the action genre, and really elevates you know, the spec script, the screenwriting
Mhm.
element to new heights, you know, because of Shane Black and what he did for the film. So
You,
I'm kind of leaning towards the Lethal Weapon, yeah,
I
camp.
agree. Yeah, it's a very edgy film, and
It
it,
is, yeah.
I wish I was around. Well, I was only two, but I wish I was a little older when the first one came out because I would have loved to have seen this for the first time, knowing very little about it. I can't really remember my first reaction to seeing it for the very first time, but
Yeah,
I saw all the at least the first three films as a
yeah,
child, and yeah,
yeah,
they were a lot of fun. I've always loved Gibson; he's hilarious, and
yeah,
he really gives a very disturbing, dark
yeah,
portrait of a guy struggling with, suicide. He lost his wife in the
yeah.
movie, and now he's ready to eat the bullet, as he
Right,
says. It's really like it's
right.
pretty
And
disturbing.
because he's off the hinge and he really doesn't care, it makes him an open cannon, and which makes the action and the violence, that much more gripping, So it's a great unique concept for the time,
Yeah,
and for now, to have that type of edge, that bite, and to have a character like Mel Gibson who was coming off of, the Road Warrior, Mad Max, and had that type of, just craziness to him too. Just, aside from his allegations and all the craziness he has in his personal life, just from a performance standpoint, he had that bite already. So it was a match made in heaven, especially with Danny Glover's type of, straight man performance.
I would almost, if I were on the voting committee at the Oscars, I would have considered him for an Oscar nomination, Gibson, because those scenes where he's about to shoot himself,
Hmm.
those are raw. They
Those
feel
are rough.
real.
Yeah,
Like it feels like he's actually
yeah.
considering to kill himself. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
and we spoke about this, but it's almost too over the top at times. I feel like it's almost like a different movie that he's in. But it's also for its time, for now. Also, it was ahead of its time, and I think something like that now would almost play as being very campy, just because he showed so much emotion, so much raw emotion, that you can't really see that in a Hollywood blockbuster movie nowadays. So I think it's phenomenal, phenomenal performance, very unique. Um, Going back to the concept of Christmas with this, it's
Right.
the fact that it's during Christmas time, I think elevates it too, even though I wouldn't consider this, a Christmas movie. It's definitely Christmas themed. And what does that mean? It means that, during that time, that season, you feel kind of spirited. You internalize things a little bit. You feel a little bit of emotional. So, it makes his situation, thinking about his wife, thinking about family,
Right.
even more daunting, a little bit more gloomy and depressive about for him. So I think it plays into that season very well. Whether
And
or not Shane Black anticipated it or not, he tends to do that throughout his films. Iron Man 3, we discussed, has Christmas themes. Nice Guys, I believe, has Christmas themes to it too. So
you mentioned family, which is very interesting in both
yeah.
films, both Lethal Weapon and Die Hard. So obviously you have Murtaugh's family,
Mhm.
Danny Glover's family in the film. They're very warm, they're very welcoming of Riggs, an outsider, kind of a guy with no family, and
Mhm.
they basically welcome him with open arms, which is beautiful. Spoiler
Mhm.
alert.
Mhm.
And also in Die Hard, you have John McClane, who's also estranged from his family, from his wife, from his kids, and
Mhm.
through a series of fantastical, action sequences, he
Mhm.
eventually wins his wife back and his family back. So
Mhm.
both movies are about winning over families and
Mhm.
acceptance and redemption, and
Mhm.
I think that's the connective tissue between both films.
Yes. Yeah.
Aside from all the other similarities, which I'm going to mention in just a little while.
Yeah. So, and that's absolutely right. So, I mean, wow. So thinking about family, and
Yeah,
thinking of the connective tissue there, it does kind of make it more in the light of a Christmas movie. I still wouldn't go that far.
right,
Ultimately, what is a Christmas movie? It has Christmas, themes, yes, but also is about the Christmas spirit. It's about, the actual holiday. If if you compare Die Hard to A Wonderful Life, like it's, you can't really connect the two
Yeah.
direct. So
I'm reaching. I'm trying to connect
yeah,
them
I
so.
think the Filmatics, universe has tried to connect Die Hard to a Christmas movie just
Yeah.
because it has Christmas themes, but I think your interpretation of family probably is the biggest connection to a Christmas movie ever. So I think, but I don't hear enough people saying that. I just think,
Right.
the biggest correlation is that it takes place on Christmas Eve
Right.
during
Right.
a Christmas party, which is not enough.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I'll be honest. In recent times, I did always consider Die Hard and now Lethal Weapon a Christmas movie, but now you raise a good point there, and it is simply the setting. That's really it.
it's the backdrop, it's the
Yeah,
setting.
yeah.
I mean, for what it's worth, like the directors and Bruce Willis and Die Hard said himself, like it's not a Christmas movie. So
Okay.
like, it's from the
Horse's
camp,
mouth.
the horse. Yeah, so
Right, fair enough, fair enough. So we got confirmation there. Always good.
this
Um,
just in.
yes. I also want to mention some other similarities between both films,
Yeah.
which are pretty interesting. All right, so aside from the whole Christmas movie, Christmas themed debate, we put that to bed, I think. And both films were actually scored by composer Michael Kamen, who wonderful composer. You probably know him best for Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. He
Hmm.
wrote the score for that great theme, which was used as the intro to many films. I forgot which studio, but anyway, great composer, and he did the great it's like I think it was a saxophone theme for Danny Glover's
Hmm.
character,
Hmm.
and just a fun score.
Yeah. It's
And
almost like as it's almost a character in itself where like if he
it,
walks a certain way or gives the sleight of eye, it's like that saxophone.
yeah, it just works beautifully, and it's almost comedic, so that's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And then we have actress Mary Ellen Trainor, who she was the police psychologist in I think
Mhm.
all four Die Hard Lethal Weapon movies, and
Mhm.
she was also the TV reporter in Die Hard. Oh, also The Goonies. Also, that was directed by Richard Donner, who did all four of the Lethal Weapons. So, and lastly, I think the biggest similarity is producer Joel Silver, who
Mhm.
produced both films, and I think he kind of struck a very similar tone in each film. It's kind of like a just a not lighthearted, but kind of
Yeah.
almost cartoonish
Yeah.
action style.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
it's a product of its time, as mentioned before. It's literally Die Hard was or Lethal Weapon was 87, Die Hard was 88. So the success of one, led the other studio to have another shot at a similar genre. So why not? So it's definitely like I wouldn't say go as far as that they're copycats. They're not. But it's definitely, what we're experiencing today with superhero movies. You have one studio, doing one thing, and then the other studio has to do another. So that was just, what was big. Same thing with slasher films. Halloween, made it big, so you had to have Nightmare on Elm Street, or whatever. You could just name a ton and it's there. So it's definitely the success produces, a similar try with other studios.
And I think with Lethal Weapon and Die Hard, you have an action hero who is basically disguised as an everyman.
Right.
They're like Riggs, Murtaugh, McClane. They're all everyman pretty much, but when they're summoned into called into action, they kind
Hmm.
of become like this red-blooded, muscular, uh, larger than life hero, which is very
Hmm.
interesting, I think, especially with McClane, who he starts off as just a regular guy, regular cop from New York. He's just there
Hmm.
to his wife to reconcile with her, and then
Hmm.
basically thrown into this situation where he has to do the right thing and survive.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I think Die Hard's wonderful. John McTiernan knocked it out of the park. It was a year after he did Predator, another fantastic red-blooded American action movie. Uh, Die Hard spawned a couple of sequels, a really good video game that I was a huge fan of. I think it was on PlayStation and they had an arcade version. But
Yeah.
yeah, Die Hard has really it's kind of gone downhill with the 2007 Live Free or Die Hard. That was a sequel where
Yeah.
they basically turned John McClane into like almost a superhero, jumping from a plane, surviving all these ridiculous things.
Yeah.
But before the show, Chris, you mentioned Die Hard with a Vengeance from 1995.
I have a soft spot for that. It was funny because for when I was a kid and it came out, for the longest time I thought that was Die Hard. Like I
Right.
thought like that was the first one.
I mean,
Um, I,
and
I thought
rightfully so. It's directed by John McTiernan as well.
yeah.
And it's weird. So Die Hard 2, Die Harder was directed by Rennie Harlin. So basically, you've got
Uh-huh.
the first and the third, both directed by McTiernan, with the Harlan directed part two, kind of like a sandwich. I love
Hmm.
part two. I don't love it. I think three is a lot better. And yeah, I think one and three would be a great double feature for any movie theater to screen. That'd be amazing,
Yeah.
you know.
Um, I don't know. I I love Avengers probably more than the first one.
Yeah,
When I think about it, Die Hard with a Vengeance, I think about Jeremy Irons, as we mentioned. I think about Samuel L. Jackson. I think about the feud between Bruce Willis and Samuel L. and the
right.
fact that like there's these racial tones, that I thought, growing up, I thought like that was kind of like very like mind-blowing to see that portrayed grittingly, on screen. So, um, and it just brought in awareness. Like, I think I saw Die Hard 2 before I saw Pulp Fiction, and the fact that, there was that correlation between Bruce Willis and Samuel L. like kind of like opened up my mind even more.
And
Um, yeah,
basically, they basically followed the same formula as Lethal Weapon.
yeah,
Two guys just thrust into the situation
yeah. Good
and have
point.
to work together.
Good point. So it kind of, one bounced off the other and then the other bounced off the other again. So
There
it's
you go.
it's kind of, it's studios doing what they do. They see success and they run towards it. But what else, like, and we also spoke about Jeremy Irons and how like he was that villain that was not seen. He was behind the
Right.
wall, in the phone booth with
And yeah, he was brothers with Hans Gruber in the
yeah.
first. So
Okay. Yeah.
nice revenge aspect there.
Yes. Yeah. Which
What
is
I
a cool concept.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're
Um,
great. I mean, that was really smart, I think.
yeah. So, and then
Also,
like we saw that concept with like um, a behind closed door villain in Speed, later on. So
microphone and
yeah.
a mouthpiece.
Yeah.
Uh, what I love about comparing Die Hard 1 and 3, Die
Hmm.
Hard 3 is an open world action movie where
Hmm.
they basically go all over the city, which is amazing. I love that. I love, especially when they shoot on location. But this movie is really like literally like a cat and mouse like
Hmm.
chase throughout the city. It's awesome. And compared to the wide open world, you have the first Die Hard, which is such a confined, almost claustrophobic space. They really like they're almost opposites. The first one is at night. The third one takes place mostly during the day. And yeah, I just a huge fan of both films. I think I do prefer the third one over the first one, but
Hmm.
they're so good. Both of them are so well made,
Hmm.
mostly because of John McTiernan and of course Joel Silver and
Hmm.
and Bruce Willis. So it's tricky to kind of rank them, but I think they're pretty on par with each other,
Sure.
you
Sure.
know. And yeah, so we'll see what the future holds for both franchises. I know that Lethal Weapon had a TV series fairly recently, about a few years ago, and I haven't seen that. Have you
Yeah.
seen that?
No, I remember hearing something about another Lethal Weapon. right?
Okay.
'Cause I mean, more or less everyone's still around, you know.
Yeah,
So
more. Yeah.
so whereas Die Hard, a I think that's just dying because the last installment didn't do so well, and it's
It
been
actually,
such
it kind
and
of,
now there's
from what
films
I
with
remember, Lethal Weapon 4 kind of tied up things in a nice, pretty bow. Like
yeah
they, it was kind of like a closure,
yeah
and it ended very positively on family.
yeah
You know, I think Riggs was starting a family of his own with Rene Russo, from what I recall.
yeah.
Um,
And
and yeah,
that's a good thing to talk about too. It's just like, the bleeding of these franchises. And I know over the last couple of years, we've seen legacy, franchises pop up where, so much amount of time with these original characters have come back, but I think even that's dying out now. I think the last Indiana Jones kind of, was
yeah,
a good testament of that, where we don't want to necessarily see these characters that we love, that were youthful and energetic, aging. We don't
it's
want to see Harrison Ford as, 80, as Indiana Jones. So,
I don't,
yeah.
yeah, I guess it is depressing to see,
Yeah.
an
Yeah, I think.
80-year-old Harrison Ford jumping and running and
Yeah.
beating people up.
Yeah.
Uh, I
Yeah.
mean, so a little side note, but yeah, Beetlejuice was like that was respectable because of all that makeup. You couldn't really tell,
Yeah. Right.
but
Right. I think that is kind of nuanced where you can get away with something like that. Even if you think about like, Beetlejuice is a dead figure, like so like the fact that age could actually work to his favor because he looks even more decrepit, so
but
like that could actually
you don't want to see an almost 80-year-old Danny Glover and a
yeah.
70-year-old Mel Gibson kind of just running around and beating people up. It
Yeah.
just doesn't have the same
Yeah.
impact as it did back in '87.
Right.
Um, but we have the original movies to look back on, and it's
And
nice.
that's the thing. Like I think that's what we need to realize is that they were a product of their time. We should take them for what it's worth. We have them. Let's
Yeah,
not bleed them out till to the point that they're something that they're not anymore.
right.
Let's focus on, and not even, I'm not saying let's reboot them. Like, let's just forget about the concept. Let's just try to think about something new. So
But
that's,
instead, these big movie studios, they're going to rely on AI and
yeah,
de-aging, and they're not even going to need Harrison Ford anymore.
yeah,
No, it's
yeah.
kind of scary, but
It is kind of scary to think, and I hope they don't go that route. Because you don't need to. Like if the way I see it, if the studios invest more money that direction, then they're spending less time developing new stars. So like we should create an outlet for your Timothy, what's his name?
Chalamet.
The yes, yeah, from the new Bob Dylan movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Or
Which I
like
hear is very good, by the way.
or I'm horrible with names.
Zen-
The from Dune, the girl
Zendaya. Is it
Zendaya.
or
Like
Daya? Daya? Daya.
yeah,
Daya.
yeah. So like these younger actors, even like an Andrew Garfield, embrace them and give them the spotlight. And I think I think they are stars, but I think stardom is not as mega house as it was, back even 20 years ago. So like, so I think that's where the studio should be investing their money, like create new franchises towards them. And, they do. I'm not saying that they don't because they also like look at Chris Pratt, and like he's doing Jurassic World and Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff. So there's that, but I don't think there's just not enough. So.
They got to start giving roles like that, those big blockbuster hero roles, to smaller actors, talented actors that fall through the cracks, that are
Yeah,
under the radar,
yeah.
and they're out there.
What I think it was Tarantino who mentioned like in an interview where like back in the day, if there was a blockbuster movie or like the start of like even the superhero movies, if they had superhero movies back the way that they do now in like the 80s and 90s, you would have someone who was a nobody, who was no name.
Yeah.
And
Like Christopher Reeve.
if people like, yeah, and if people like them, their career essentially took off,
Yeah.
from in that blockbuster.
Yeah.
Whereas now the expectation is that you have to be a star in order to get a role like that. So there's really no buildup anymore of that
Right.
career.
There's like no
So
opportunity left for the
right,
younger, more
right,
talent.
right. So no opportunity, and thus, there's nothing to grip onto for certain franchises, after a while. So that's why we're forced to go back and dip our pen in these same franchises that existed for so many amount of years.
That's where you and I will come into play
Yeah,
with our screenplay ideas, I think.
that's
Uh,
right. That's right. That
I think people,
originality.
yeah, I've dabbled in some
Mhm.
screenwriting. Chris, you're an accomplished screenwriter yourself. I know you've got some projects
Oh,
brewing.
yeah, not not
uh,
not headstrong like that, but yes,
Okay.
I've ran some things.
But hopefully, our ideas and other ideas from individuals such like ourselves, those
Mhm.
ideas will come. We'll put pen to paper,
Yeah,
and it'll be an opportunity for new actors to be heard, new voices to be heard. Because that's what this is all about. This is art, and
that's
we
right.
have we have to create new content that's creative,
Right.
interesting, and that's not just cookie cutter. So.
Right.
So, well, all right. We're almost about out of time here, but I just wanted to see if there's any.
Already.
I know. It this went by quick,
Yeah.
but that's the holiday cheer, you know.
Let's just lay it to bed, though.
Uh-huh.
Howard, is it a Christmas movie or not?
No, I think you talked me out of that. You talked me off the ledge, like Riggs and
Really?
yeah, yeah,
Really?
yeah.
I,
Uh,
I did
we
my
jumped
best.
we jumped off
Uh,
together. I'd say
yeah,
it's not a Christmas movie. It is simply set during Christmas. It
yeah,
is.
I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah.
Just because it's Christmas Eve at a Christmas party does not make it a Christmas. No.
Indeed, indeed, sir. All right, so with about a minute or so left, Chris, any plugs right now? Anything going on?
Nothing too much, just writings from We Got This Covered. And just you can find me on Facebook, on Instagram, under Christopher Clementi. So yeah.
Lovely. Thank you, Mr. Clemente. As for me, you can check out new episodes of Under the Radar on Slam Radio, and that's on SiriusXM every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. Also on Saturdays at 6 p.m. Eastern. And of course, you can catch the video portion of this podcast on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, and that's every Monday rather, at 11 a.m. Eastern. So, Chris Clemente, thank you so much for tonight. As always, you're a great guy, great guest, critic. Thank you.
Yes, and happy holidays, everyone.
Yes. Happy holidays from Under the
Yeah.
Radar. I'm Ren Younger. Yeah, Under the Radar, bringing movies and people together one frame at a time. We'll see you next time. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.